Greetings, non-feminist men and women of the world. This is Monday, July 6th, 2015. Welcome to episode number 55 of the Vanguard Report. Here on the Vanguard Report, we like to put feminism first. Men's rights, that comes third or fourth on the list. Oh, don't get me wrong, we do find the subject of men's rights interesting, and we think about it quite a bit, but our political focus is on feminism's wrongs, which most conveniently happen to be wrongs against men. So yes, we do point that out when it comes up. But we really need to do something about the feminist problem. And we need to instill a sense of moral urgency into as many people as possible in pursuit of that purpose. This, to our way of thinking, is the priority. So if we talk about men's rights, it is as the flip side of feminism's wrongs that we do so. We avoid anything that sounds like we are speaking from the male clubhouse perspective, and we shun like the plague anything that smacks of male self-pity. That stuff makes for lousy political traction. This is not a pity party for men. It is absolutely true that feminism wages war against men and boys. But what we find politically useful is to focus on the ripple effect of this war, the fallout of this war, the collateral damage to the social ecology of this war. Yes, feminism is a war not simply against men, but against everybody and everything, which even passively gets in feminism's way. In other words, anything and everything which is not feminist. And we find ourselves constantly trying to walk a fine line and strike a balance between avoiding anything that sounds like the male perspective or male self-pity on the one hand, or on the other hand, acknowledging that feminism is making war against men. Yes, feminism is making war against men. We acknowledge that. We shine the spotlight on that, but we try to avoid falling into anything like male self-pity rhetoric, promoting the idea of men as victims. And it's kind of a fine line to walk, but we try to do it. So just for the record, I am not feminist, and I do not take it kindly that feminism has declared war on me due to my personal lack of feminism. So I will continue to get in feminism's way and feminism's face, both passively and actively. I am Fiedelbogen, and I am your host on the Vanguard Report, and this is episode number 55 of the Vanguard Report. My fellow host, Nick Redding, man of Canada and true son of the Alberta Prairie, couldn't make it in today, so I will just urge you all to go to mensrightsedmonton.com, take a look at their website, and look for the contact information on that page. And if you are ever in Edmonton, Alberta, or in the area, or maybe know somebody who is, you can get a hold of Nick and go hang out with Nick in Edmonton. Or line somebody up with Nick, or so line Nick up with somebody that maybe he doesn't know who lives in Edmonton who might profitably gain something from Nick's acquaintance. and the Men's Rights Edmonton Project. All right. Let's start off the episode. This is cue number 2 on your cue list. And it's Reddit revolt flares again as AMA moderator sacked the day after a disastrous Jesse Jackson episode. Yes, Redditgate. Well, they're calling it the Reddit revolt anyway, but just to keep on a roll with the gate theme here, let's just call it Redditgate. Reddit revolt, okay, it's the Reddit revolt. Reddit revolt flares again as AMA moderator sacked the day after a disastrous Jesse Jackson Q&A. And AMA stands for Ask Me Anything. That's where they get various celebrities onto Reddit, and they have kind of a town hall free-for-all thing where people just ask them questions. And I guess people can ask them anything. Anything? Anything? Okay. That could get interesting. Reddit is in meltdown. The hugely popular link-sharing site is in a state of virtual lockdown after the volunteers who run some of the site's biggest communities, known as subreddits, went on the digital equivalent of a general strike. This followed the sacking of Victoria Taylor, a popular site admin, after a Reddit Q&A with the Reverend Jesse Jackson went badly for the activist preacher. High-traffic subreddits dedicated to movies, gaming, videos, history, science, and art, and I admit I haven't looked at the men's rights subreddit to see if it's been locked down or not, have been voluntarily locked down by their moderators as an act of protest against the decision, which they saw as a symptom of an increasingly overbearing management that takes its users and volunteer moderators for granted. What comes too easy gets thrown away, eh? The collective shutdown has rendered Reddit virtually unusable. In the space of a single evening, over 100 subreddits with tens of millions of subscribers have gone dark. The users are now flocking to Reddit's competitors such as Frisbee and Voat. I hope I pronounced that right. Voat. The latter of which is struggling to accommodate its largest spike in traffic. I understand that Voat is a small operation, is run by 2 people in Europe. This is not the first time Reddit has seen a revolt against its management. Around mid-June, users waged a week-long rebellion against the site management after Reddit shut down a number of quote-unquote politically incorrect subreddits. But this is the first time that so many big moderators have simultaneously shut down their subreddits. It's another blow for interim Reddit CEO Ellen Pao. And that's Pao is spelled like Mao as in Chairman Mao, except it's spelled with a P. Pao, P-A-O. Ellen Pao, with users dubbing her Chairman Pao ever since the June crackdown. The current revolt was triggered by the sacking of Victoria Taylor, a veteran administrator on the site who specialized in arranging high-profile Reddit Q&As known as Ask Me Anything, or AMA sessions. Ask Me Anythings are probably Reddit's best-known feature and are known for featuring world-famous guests including Barack Obama, Sir Tim Berners-Lee, and Julian Assange. Victoria Taylor was reportedly instrumental in securing guests and helping to organize AMA sessions across a variety of large subreddits. Her removal triggered outrage among moderators, who deemed her to be indispensable to the community. The one key moderator said the site management had, quote, pulled the rug out from under them, unquote. Moderators are particularly angry at the suddenness of Taylor's sacking, which came without warning or communication with the community. So far, users are still in the dark as to why Taylor was removed. One theory, which is gaining an increasing amount of traction, however, is that Taylor is being held responsible for the embarrassment of Reverend Jesse Jackson in his recent AMA session. Okay, well, let's pause a moment here. And it's kind of looking like political correctness is at the root of this. Jesse Jackson is a person who's known to, say rather inflammatory things sometimes. And he's the kind of guy that would attract hardball questions from a certain segment of the public. And I suspect that's what happened. He got some hardball questions from people. And, well, it was ask him anything, and people took that on its word, and they asked him anything. And apparently it was, I don't know, maybe the wrong anything to be asking him. And it happened on Victoria Taylor's watch. And Victoria Taylor got in trouble for it. Now, that would be my reading of what went down here. As a Daily Caller reported, the Reverend Jesse Jackson hosted an Ask Me Anything Wednesday on Reddit that did not go as planned, as users hit him with hard questions. Yes. The top question stated that he is, quote, an immoral, hate-filled race baiter that has figured out how to manipulate the political system for your own gain. I think that's not too far off the mark for the Reverend Jackson. Jackson's answers then became confusing and evasive. When asked, what are some things that the average African American can do to help reduce racial tensions in his area, Jackson wrote, well, the source of those tensions often come from denial of an even playing field. We are very good at athletics. Haven't quite worked that one out yet, but I know it's good. It's safe to say that the AMA did not go well for Jackson. In the full discussion, which can be viewed here, Jackson's answers to Redditors often take the appearance of a string of talking points that have no relation to the questions being asked. Perhaps the questions were being asked by an intern with a list of stock lines. Who knows? It's easy to see why some believe that Jackson's appalling AMA performance may have had something to do with Taylor's removal. Moderators are often held responsible for not doing enough to filter questions on AMAs, and it wouldn't be surprising if the activist preacher complained to Reddit. The influence of radical identity politics over Silicon Valley executives like the ones who run Reddit should not be underestimated, of course. Ellen Pao is notorious for her opportunistic use of discrimination law, while interim Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey attended last year's protests in Ferguson. In Silicon Valley, someone like Jesse Jackson is akin to a deity. That said, the idea that Jesse Jackson's AMA was the pebble that started the recent avalanche at Reddit remains only a theory, although there is some evidence pointing in its direction, such as the banning of the Redditor who asked Jackson the toughest questions. There is no way of... Well, it is Ask Me Anything, isn't it? If you don't want to be asked anything, maybe you best not show up. That's what I'm thinking. Okay. There is no way of knowing for sure until either Reddit or Ms. Taylor release a statement. And that in itself represents a persistent problem for Reddit. As one of the rebel moderators highlighted, communication between the site management and the site community had been deteriorating for some time. The fact that no one outside the site administration knows why Taylor was suspended is further proof. Although the last Reddit revolt faded, it is increasingly clear that the relationship between Reddit's leadership, in particular CEO Ellen Pao, and Reddit's base of users and moderators is no longer sustainable. Ooh, I got to read that last sentence again. Although the last Reddit revolt faded, it is increasingly clear that the relationship between Reddit's leadership, in particular CEO Ellen Pao, and Reddit's base of users and moderators is no longer sustainable. At the moment, it seems Reddit's only salvation is Voat's inability to handle high volume traffic. It's not a good situation to be in. Well, that's the end of the article, by the way. You say that's not a good situation to be in. Well, depending on who you are and how you are situated, we could possibly quibble with that last statement there. Now, if all of you out there are like me, first thing that comes to mind is Gamergate. There seems to be a pattern here. What is the connection between Gamergate and this Redditgate thing that's going on right now? Boy, it's one of those David and Goliath things. It's a bunch of pissed off people taking on the powers that be, the high corporate powers that be. It's a consumer revolt. They seem to be of a pattern, these two things, this Redditgate and this Gamergate. And then there is the matter of political correctness. Boy, political correctness just seems to pop up again and again and again. There's a pattern I'm seeing here of people rebelling against political orthodoxy, against some higher up powerful people imposing a collective filter on what may be said and ultimately thought, trying to filter out, well, anything that poses a threat to a certain prevailing orthodox narrative. Something like that was going on in the case of Gamergate, and I think I see something like that going on here in the case of the Reddit revolt. And I cannot help but wonder if Gamergate was in the backs of the minds of the various people who staged this thing at Reddit. And I'm willing to put some smart money on it that it was. So this is interesting. This is not directly about feminism or anything, but you know, as the range of our political vision begins to expand and the perimeter grows out wider and wider, we are seeing interconnections between more and more issues. I guess that's just a part of growing into a higher level of gamesmanship. Well, so much for the Reddit revolt. It certainly is an interesting development and it bears watching. And certainly this, along with Gamergate, will send a message to certain powers out there, and those powers know who they are. All right. Let's talk about something different now. I'd like to talk about the non-feminist message. What is the non-feminist message? Well, that could be a long discussion there. But if I had to boil down what is the non-feminist message, boil it down to its core, it would be that feminism is not the only thing on earth. That would be a pretty big part of the non-feminist message, the message that feminism is not the only thing on earth. It's a message to feminism and feminists, And it's a message to just everybody in general. Feminism is not the only thing on Earth. Just like visible matter is not the only thing in the universe. There's dark matter and there's dark energy. In fact, something like 80%, which, interestingly enough, is about the percentage of people on Earth that are supposedly not feminist. Having said all that, I should add that the non-feminist message is everything. Yes, the non-feminist message is everything, and the messenger is nothing. This is where feminist behavior must be schooled and retooled. The personal attributes of the non-feminist messenger must not be considered in the processing of the non-feminist message. To conflate the non-feminist messenger with the non-feminist message is to conflate the personal with the political. And that is a form of feminist aggression. That's right, feminist aggression. It is feminist aggression. Furthermore, it is off topic. And what would be the topic then? Well, it's whatever topic you, as the non-feminist messenger, have chosen. If they decide to make it about something else, and worst of all, if they decide to make it about you, then it's a strike against them. It goes on feminism's permanent record. And yes, we do hold feminism collectively accountable for the behavior of individual feminists. Collectivism was their idea in the beginning. They started it as the aggressor. They set those terms of engagement, and they licensed those very same terms to the aggressee. Now that's us. So, they, the feminists, have no moral high ground from which to whine about us, or about it rather, when other people, meaning non-feminist people, finally give them a taste of their own. This is called what goes around comes around. Or if you can dish it out, you can take it. So, neither the concrete personality of the messenger nor the messenger's supposed membership in some putative group may be considered in the processing of the non-feminist message, given that both of these things may be classed as personal attributes. It is not permitted to factor them into the plain intention of any words the message might contain. The message, the words contained in the message, all of that stands on its own. It means what it means, all by itself. Even if a robot was reading those words, they would still mean what they meant. Hence, to make the messenger's concrete personality a point of discussion is an invalid procedure, a violation of protocol, and yes, a form of feminist aggression. And please note, all of their action toward us is aggression. karmic demerit points. All feminists will be held
Hey,
collectively
Futablack,
accountable. Yes.
we lost you for a minute there. I think you accidentally muted yourself.
Well, you got me back now, so I guess all's well that ends well.
All right. Lost you
Hmm.
at feminist aggression.
You lost me at feminist aggression. Well, I
Yeah,
said that in the. Would that be a violation of protocol and yes, a form of feminist aggression?
there we go.
Well, at the risk of reading the same thing over twice, here we go. Hence, to make the messenger's concrete personality a point of discussion is an invalid procedure, a violation of protocol, and yes, a form of feminist aggression. And please note, all of their action toward us is aggression. Likewise, to address the messenger as you people or you guys. You ever get that? You ever talk with a feminist and they say, "Hey, you guys" or "you people" when they're talking to you? Boy, that irritates me. To address the messenger as you people or you guys or any but the individual appellative which the messenger has chosen is an invalid procedure, a violation of protocol and a form of feminist aggression. Yes, once again, it's that feminist aggression. Remember that every non-feminist person is an individual, and every non-feminist person is a messenger bearing one or another form of message. All violation of the principles sketched above will be added to feminism's karmic demerit points. All feminists will be held collectively accountable for the accumulation of these demerits. To summarize, it is required for all feminists to do two things in their conversation with us. One, to address you as a non-feminist individual, not as a member of any group or movement. Two, to address the topic and leave your personality strictly out of the conversation altogether. So it's a bit of a, I don't know, slightly paradoxical there. You're to be treated as an individual, and yet your individuality is to be left out of the conversation. I hope that makes sense. It's funny as hell how feminists are endlessly whining on the theme of not all feminists are like that and don't generalize. Well, they must learn to proffer that same courtesy to other people also. Not only do feminists endlessly generalize about anybody who says no to feminism, but feminist theory itself, as taught in academia and propagated in the culture at large, relentlessly generalizes the entire world of human reality. They're the ones who say don't generalize, and yet, boy, do they ever generalize us. Everybody and everything, according to them, is explainable in terms of feminist theory. Yes, folks, I'm talking to you. Your life is just a subset or subdivision or subcategory of feminist theory. Feminists know more about your life than you do. How do you like that? So did they consult us before they started saying these things about us? Did they ever sit down and politely chat with us and run these things past us and say, here is our theory about you, your life, and your world. We would like to promote this as the official version of reality and teach it in all the schools and spread it through all the media and alter the criminal justice system in order to reflect it. But before we get started, we'd like to check with you first and see if that's okay. Did they ever do that? Did they ever ask us about any of this? Did they ever seek our permission to tell us who and what we are? No, no, they never did. They just went ahead and did what they did. Yes, they acted like feminism was the only thing on earth, in flagrant violation of the non-feminist message, which is a message that feminism is not the only thing on earth. And we, the non-feminist men and women of the world, do not take that kindly. We do not take it kindly. End of sermon. Let's move along, share some more items from off of the internet. Here is cue number 1. Boy, I'm not taking these in numerical order, am I? The first one I shared was cue number 2, and now I'm popping over to cue number 1. That's right there on the list. This is from the Spectator UK, a rather juicy sounding article called Why Social Justice Warriors Are Losing. Let's dig through that. This is, yes, the Spectator UK. Why social justice warriors are losing. It's interesting that the term social justice warrior has now hit the journalistic mainstream. And it's getting up there on the big, wide circulation media outlets. It's just getting to be part of everybody's lexicology now. Social justice warrior. Even Mom and Pop and Aunt Sally and Uncle Fred are talking about social justice warriors. So here's a big fat picture of Anita Sarkeesian speaking from a podium. What has happened to social justice warriors recently? Every campaign seems to fail. The latest being a cack-handed attempt to police Twitter in order to win the Gamergate saga. Turn to page 194 for details. I'm not sure what they mean by page 194. Gamergate is one of those things that a couple of years ago would have been resolved quickly, going into the narrative as part of the great struggle against the isms. Instead, it goes on, and the SJWs seem to be losing the battle. It's not the only one. Take, for example, the This Is What a Feminist Looks Like t-shirt campaign, which one would have expected the core group of online social justice warriors to win. Instead, the campaigners looked like the aggressors. Aggressors, that's right, they're the aggressors. To make matters worse, it turned out that these luxury items, 45 pounds for a t-shirt, being an SJW ain't cheap. I'm not very good at currency conversion, but I know that 45 pounds is quite a bit of money. It's more, I think, than 45 US dollars would be. And I must agree, that ain't cheap for a t-shirt. It turned out that these luxury items were made by people on 62 pence an hour. I don't know what 62 pence would translate into, but if it's 62 pennies, boy, that bites. But I think it's more than that, but it's probably still not very much. 62 pence doesn't sound like very much to me. Likewise, the campaign to illustrate the problem of street harassment, which instead descended into an argument over race, as anyone who has ever visited the planet Earth could have predicted. Well, as anybody who watched that particular video, the 10 Hours in New York video, could have predicted, when you see what kind of people on the street were mainly talking to that young woman. Social justice campaigns about sexism and racism will inevitably clash, but it's amusing to see how some SJWs try to square this. Even manufactured outrage seems to fail these days. Labor's attempt to misconstrue Lord Freud's words ended with booing on Question Time, while last year a similar effort at construing anger about an advertiser's comments on education and IQ met with a lot of resistance. Yeah, some people are very good at misconstruing things and misrepresenting things. This is also known as spin or as controlling the narrative. You say something and they try to make it as if you said something else that you did not in fact say, and they try to control you and make you look like the bad guy or put you in a bad light in some way, and tell everybody on earth what the real story is and what's really happening. Social justice warriors are a powerful but small group, and they depend on the goodwill and tacit support of a far larger number of social liberals. If they can win their backing, then social change really is possible, even if it's change that ignores prevailing evidence and which most people think is a bit nuts. Social liberals inhabit what I think of as the nice left, and don't like to confront issues where conflict is about the lesser of two evils, or which raise uncomfortable truths. People on the nice left will tend to support anything that A, makes them feel like they're one of the good guys, and B, doesn't make them look ridiculous or unintelligent. Educated men in particular don't want to seem unkind, but they can't stand looking stupid. And yet they regularly do. Interesting how educated people so consistently manage to look stupid. I couldn't help making that observation. Social justice warriors have been pretty successful over the past 2 or 3 decades, but they seem to be losing their touch. Maybe because they're out of touch? Perhaps this is because there has been a certain democratization of opinion in the media. Newspaper commenters, who for some reason take themselves as moral arbiters, tend to side with the social justice warriors, but their monopoly of the pulpit has long faded. Social justice warriors work by making disproportionate noise. But with the decline of the newspaper comment monopoly, enough people with enough clout can see that, for example, Dominic Cummings' word on IQ and education, or Lord Freud's words on disabled workers, were being twisted, or that the street harassment campaign didn't quite fit the social justice warrior narrative. Not to mention that the whole thing stunk to the high heavens of sheer fraud. Compare the situation today, that last bit was my own comment. Compare the situation today with that of 20 years ago during the greatest social justice warrior victory of all, the controversy over the bell curve, a big event in American and by default British cultural life. While the scientific community said one thing about Charlie Murray and Richard Bernstein's book on intelligence, the political media elite said another, and the public followed the latter's lead. If the bell curve was published today, it would be much harder for the modern-day Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith to attack it. The bell curve war was an important issue in itself. An opportunity to counter America's growing inequality was lost. But it was also significant because it confirmed the idea that anyone who came to a controversial conclusion, in this case supposedly racist, could be ostracized, name-called, and in the current parlance, shown the door. That sort of ideologically justified bullying is a key tactic of the social justice warrior movement, but when exposed as such can work against them. The nice left, after all, don't like to be seen siding with self-appointed policemen of debate. End of article. Well, I think it should do our hearts good to see the social justice warriors finally getting their comeuppance. They've had it coming for a long time. Their karmic demerit points have been building and building. And what goes around eventually comes around, even if the wheels do turn rather slowly sometimes. I think they do turn. We don't live in a static world. And things just don't go on and on and on in the same way. Eventually, things start to move around and shift around. Now, let's go to cue number 3 on our cue list. This is from the Daily Mail UK. Teenage girls 13 and 14 stopped to take selfies and post them on Snapchat as they battered woman to death with TV, table, and kettle. Let's just stop and think about that for 5 seconds or so. Stopped to take selfies and posted them on the internet while they were battering a woman to death with a television, a table, and a kettle. 13 and 14-year-old, 2 girls, one age 13, one 14. Sugar and spice, folks, sugar and spice. Angela Wrightson, 39, found dead in her Hartlepool home last December. She had been subjected to more than 100 injuries and beaten with a number of weapons. Younger girl took pictures at the scene and posted them on Snapchat. Both girls deny murder. The younger teen denies involvement in attack, while older friend says she did not mean to seriously hurt Ms. Wrightson, or Miss Wrightson, rather. Well, she meant to hurt her, but not seriously. Okay, she just swung a television at her face, but no, nothing serious there. Teenage girls took selfies and posted them on Snapchat while they battered a woman to death with a television set, computer printer, and a kettle, according to her today. Angela Wrightson, 39, was subjected to a sustained and brutal assault before her half-naked body was found at her home in Hartlepool in December, Teesside Crown Court heard. 2 teenage girls who were aged 13 and 14 at the time of the killing are accused of carrying out the attack, while the younger girl is said to have published a selfie taken at Ms. Wrightson's home after the violence began on social media app Snapchat. Ms. Wrightson and the other girl, her best friend, could be seen in the picture, and the older woman already had marks on her face, the court heard. Both girls were grinning, but Ms. Wrightson was not. Boy, she was not grinning. He was getting beaten to death with a television and a kettle and what else? I don't know. And she was not grinning. Okay. The court was told. She then took a photograph of the pair in the back of a police van, captioning it, "In the back of the busy van again." A police officer in the van had heard the word Snapchat, and turned the flash on and realized that they were taking photographs, so he told them to stop. Nicholas Campbell, QC, prosecuting, told the jury. The jury had heard how Ms. Wrightson, an alcoholic who would buy cigarettes and drink for underage youths, was found dead by her landlord. The body was sitting on a sofa in her front room. She was naked from the waist down, Mr. Campbell said. The landlord dialed 999, and emergency services were called to the property. Forensic experts found shards of glass and gravel around the victim's private parts and ash in her right ear. I'm looking at a picture of this Ms. Wrightson. I don't know how to put it, but she is not a good-looking woman. In fact, she would not even be a good-looking man. Go to the link and you'll see. Mr. Campbell said it became clear that Angela Wrightson had been the victim of a sustained and brutal assault. There were well over 100 injuries. The evidence at the scene of the crime showed she had been struck in 12 separate locations within that room. A number of implements were used as weapons. They included a wooden stick with screws standing proud of the surface, a TV set, a printer from a home computer, a coffee table, and a shovel. Smaller items such as a kettle and a metal pan were used together with a glass vase and other ornaments. Okay, and this was being done by two girls, one age 13, the other age 14. Girls who did this, okay? These were not boys doing this, these were girls doing this. I just want to point that out because, well, that's what the story says. Later, the younger girl rang a friend using Facebook, jurors heard, and that witness went on to tell police that during the call she heard the defendant shout, "Go on," names older defendant, "smash her head in, bray her, fucking kill her." I think that's what the asterisk are saying there, fucking kill her. The witness told police she thought she then heard laughing in the background. The friend thought the defendant sounded drunk. Now aged 14 and 15, the defendants had formed an intense relationship, the court heard. The prosecution case is that they were in it together and that they are jointly responsible for this fatal act, Mr. Campbell said. Both defendants deny murder, with the older girl saying she did not intend serious harm, and her co-accused claiming she did not encourage or take part in the violence. The younger girl took selfies at the crime scene after the violence had started and published one on social media, the court heard. One taken at 9 p.m. showed her co-accused in the background and further back Ms. Wrightson. Both girls were smiling, but the woman was not, Mr. Campbell said, and there were already marks on her face. Further, selfies that the younger girl took showed the girls drinking cider from a bottle. The girls had let themselves in through Miss Wrightson's unlocked front door at around 7:30 p.m. and left after 11 p.m., jurors heard. They came back at around 2 a.m. They came back at around 2 a.m. the next morning before leaving a final time at 4 a.m. They went in once, and they came back, and then they left again. Ms. Wrightson may already have been dead by 11 p.m., the court was told. And here is the street in Hartlepool that Ms. Wrightson apparently lived on. It is a rather grim-looking street of row houses. Sort of reminds me of Philadelphia a little bit. Between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m., they chatted with a local teenager who asked why they had blood on their clothes, jurors heard. They told him they had both fallen over. He heard the older girl say, "We have to get back to the house, check if she is dead." The younger girl was staying with foster parents while the older one was in a local authority home, the jury was told. The older girl had visited her mother on the day of the attack, the jury heard. "You will be hearing that theirs is not a constructive relationship," Mr. Campbell said. The girl was seen to be upset, and when a relative asked why, she said her mother had told her to go and kill herself. Her mother had told her to go and kill herself, the court heard. The defendants were close friends. It is the prosecution case that each was a bad influence on the other, and at night they would often run off together, causing the police to be involved in bringing them back to their respective homes, Mr. Campbell said. The night of the murder was such a night. Around 6 weeks before the murder, the younger girl sent the older defendant a message referring to her little partner in crime, the court was told. After the murder, Mr. Campbell said both girls knew that police were looking for them as they had spent the night out. Having failed to get a taxi to collect them from the murder scene, they rang the police to take them home at gone 4 a.m., the jury was told. He told the jury that on the way back, the younger defendant took a photo on her phone of the other girl in the police van and shared it on Snapchat. The picture was captioned, "Me and name of older girl," in the back of the busy van again. The busy van, I guess that means the paddy wagon. The younger girl confided in a friend the next day how a terrified Ms. Wrightson begged for them to stop. The court heard. She said it had all started when Angela Wrightson had threatened her with a knife, and when she retaliated, the other girl joined in as well, Mr. Campbell said, as he told the jury that the witness said the defendant had told her. Thereafter, the older girl had done most of the stuff. They had smashed up the house, and they had smashed the bits over Angela Wrightson. The girl told her friend that the TV was smashed over the victim, and they had stamped all over her head. Mr. Campbell said the defendant told her friend Angela Wrightson had been saying, "Please don't stop, I'm scared," but they carried on. Mr. Campbell said the friend will say the younger defendant wanted Ms. Wrightson dead and had a hate for Angie, but she didn't know why. After news of the murder spread the next day, the older girl told a support worker it was shocking. During a shopping trip, she asked the adult, "How do you think it feels to kill someone? Do you think you feel empty? Do you think you would feel bad?" The trial was adjourned until tomorrow. End of article. Well, these were girls who committed this heinous crime, 13 years old and 14 years old. They were not a 13 and 14-year-old team of boys doing this. So, yeah, we know that females can be violent sometimes. We know that. Of course, we also know that it wasn't really their fault. Because, well, patriarchy, yeah, the patriarchy made them do this. Well, that's what feminism teaches. See, feminism teaches us that women are not morally accountable for their actions. Anytime a woman does some terrible thing, well, she has a fast get-out card. The patriarchy made her do it. It never fails. I'd be interested to hear some feminists talking about this story. And I'd be interested to see what kind of a sentence these girls finally get from the court of law. But of course, I know it's not really their fault. Got your sarcasm radar running right now. I know it's not really their fault. I know it's just the patriarchy that made them do it. They couldn't help it. Because according to feminism, women are all a bunch of moral robots. They live in a patriarchal power structure which tilts the playing field against women. They're not equal, and the only way that women can equalize things in their relationships with men is to do any damn thing they please and not be held accountable for it. Now, someday, when we finally dismantle the patriarchy and it's all gone, all swept away, then once again, women will have moral agency. Women will be responsible for their actions. Women will be accountable for their actions as individuals. But that day is not yet, because we haven't swept the patriarchy out of the way yet. So from here on out, for the foreseeable future, women can go on doing terrible things if they want to. And it's just not the same as when a man does it. It's just not as bad as when a man does it. Okay? That's feminism, folks. The project to increase the power of women. And when I say increase the power of women, I mean increase their power in every direction, for good or for ill. That's feminism. So,
I would like to add something to that.
please do.
At the expense of men.
At the expense of men, all right.
In almost every way. I mean, where's the majority tax funding coming from?
I think it's coming from men.
Yep. Majority of labor, raw labor.
Raw labor, hard labor, dirty, dangerous, vital labor. Yeah, I think that would be a male source.
Yep. So all this power is a redistribution effort.
A redistribution effort.
Yes.
Can you enlarge on what is being redistributed here a little bit?
Time and labor is being redistributed, or the products of time and labor are being redistributed.
And when you
and you know, when you take a look at things like how our taxes are running, when you take a look at non-involvement of women in various sectors of society, sectors that are absolutely vital to keeping a society alive.
but maybe not,
Not
so
necessarily
fun.
progressing, but alive.
Yeah, they're vital to keeping society alive, but not exactly fun in games most of the time.
Exactly. Right. I mean, we're not looking at anything here that I don't think we've covered before. But it is. It's a redistributive effort. It's
Well,
women gaining all this power at the expense of men.
well, it's as I like to put it, it's the redistribution of the tangible and intangible goods of life. But really, the bottom line to all this, in the most fungible terms, is power. And it's power that's being redistributed. But something I didn't quite catch there, James. You said it was the fault of men in some way. I didn't quite get the connection there. Could you?
Oh no,
kind of
no,
go?
I didn't say it was in any way, men's fault.
Or men were to blame for it in some way, because that's what I thought I heard you say.
No,
Oh, okay. Well,
no.
I have to listen more carefully.
There's plenty of individual men who I could probably lambast all day long. But those individual men catered to and were put into positions of power by, at least in Western society, by a majority female voting bloc.
Okay, that's true enough.
So there you go.
The majority voting block, I was going to say. The majority voting block is female. That means we have a female electorate that has the power to elect whatever it wants to elect. And I can only choose to believe.
It's not just in population wise. If you take a look at the statistics, you'll find a higher participation rate.
In other words, a higher turnout.
Well.
A higher turnout at the polls. Yes.
Yes.
So women have the power of the vote. Thank feminism for that. That was a feminist project. Women's suffrage was, because it was a major milestone on the road to the empowerment of women. And whatever you might say about enfranchising women, we could say it was a good thing. I'm not going to argue that it was a bad thing, but one thing is undeniable, and that is it did empower women. And the feminist project is all very consistently toward one purpose, toward one goal, and that is to give women more and more and more and more power with no clearly stipulated endpoint. So in the end, the feminist project can only be female supremacism, leading toward a future state of female supremacy. And anything, good or bad, that adds to the sum total of women's power is grist for that mill. That's the way to understand it. When they try to confuse you and point out all the good things that feminism has supposedly done, all you got to remember is that throughout all of that, the project was to increase female power. And that was a pretty grim story, that article that I just read. And of course, once again, these little girls, they were not responsible for what they did to that woman. They were moral robots with no moral agency. And everything they did was acted out within the feminist script, which gives all women a get out of guilt free card. Because, you know, patriarchy. Got to get even with the patriarchy one way or another. Moving right along. Cue number 4. Now this was an interesting one. See if I can pull it up here. Did you know that dogs and cats are worth more than human males? Well, that's the message we get out of this next article. Pets of family violence victims to be offered protection in Victoria. And this would be the state of Victoria in Australia. This is from The Guardian, the UK Guardian, which has correspondence from, I guess, all over the world, including Australia. $100,000 earmarked for pet protection programs after studies show victims may delay leaving an abusive relationship out of fear of what will happen to their pets. A UK study found perpetrators of violence usually harm those physically weaker than themselves, and as a result, abuse of animals occurs frequently in conjunction with human abuse. And this article was written by Melissa Davey. That's spelled Melissa, M-E-L-I-S-S-A. Last name Davey, D-A-V-E-Y. And Melissa Davey is on Twitter. It's at Melissa L. Davey. And L would be her middle initial. At Melissa L. Davey. She is on Twitter. And she is an Australian correspondent for this UK Guardian. The pets of women and children fleeing family violence will be offered protection as part of a program funded by the Victorian government. Numerous reviews have shown that perpetrators of family violence use threats and harm to pets as a way of maintaining control of their victims, and that victims may delay leaving an abusive relationship out of fear of what will happen to their pets. Over the next 4 years, $100,000 will be given to the Family Violence Response Service, Safe Steps, to build relationships with animal welfare agencies such as the RCPCA and Family Violence Services, the state government announced on Sunday. So far, no mention of who the violent perpetrators are. And we're 3 paragraphs into the article. Victoria's Minister for Families and Children, Ginny Mikakos, said the funding would give people in violent situations greater confidence to seek safety. This small program will make a huge difference in helping victims leave violent situations and to get support, she said. Kim Gentle, interesting name there, Kim Gentle is a survivor of family violence who now lives in Port Hedland. Her perpetrator is now in jail, having physically, financially, and emotionally abused Gentle. He also killed her dog. All right, now it starts to get gendered. He also killed the dog, Gentle's dog. He threw her off a cliff, Gentle told Guardian Australia. He thought I paid more attention to my dog than to him, and that I had more love for her than I did for him. He was jealous, I rescued that dog from the RSPCA, and she came everywhere with me. These perpetrators will take anything precious to you. You know something? I think that the author of this article, this Melissa Davey, I think she is a feminist. And I think she was constructing this article in her mind as she wrote with a very definite message planned. But let's go on. Gentle believes pet protection programs for family violence victims should be rolled out across the country. Pet protection programs for family violence victims. Pets have incredible healing powers, especially for children, and that is well documented, she said. I can only applaud Victoria, that is the state of Victoria. I can only applaud Victoria for this program, and I hope it follows through everywhere. In its submission to Victoria's Royal Commission into Family Violence, the RSPCA said, while some animal shelters provided ad hoc welfare boarding for the pets of people fleeing family violence, they were poorly funded. Funding for welfare boarding is unreliable and often limited, the submission said. Welfare boarding is only provided by animal shelters when they have the capacity to do so. Local governments should have a responsibility to provide welfare boarding for animals, and this should not be a responsibility of charities. A government-supported system is required. The CEO of RSPCA Victoria, Dr. Liz Walker, said the government's funding announcement on Sunday was encouraging. We look forward to being part of the development of a broader strategy to address the temporary sheltering and care of animals across the state, she said. A 2012 report provided to the Royal New Zealand Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals and the National Collective of Independent Women's Refuges in New Zealand found cruelty to pets was most commonly reported as a form of punishment. Cruelty involved injury or death of an animal in retribution for a family member's unsatisfactory behavior, the report found. As such, animal cruelty was orchestrated to directly hurt the woman and children. The outcome of the abuse was a level of intimidation that secured the family's compliance and obedience for fear that a cherished animal would be beaten or killed. Another study from the Oxford Centre for Animal Ethics in the UK found perpetrators of violence usually harm those physically weaker than themselves, and as a result, abuse of animals occurs frequently in conjunction with human abuse. Animal abuse was a red flag for other forms of violence, it said. Unfortunately, health agencies do not give the human-animal violence link sufficient weight in public health policy, the study found. That's the end of the article, except for a little bit more, a short bullet-pointed list, which the author, Melissa Davey, apparently added to the end of the article. Contact information for pet crisis services, a helpline for family violence counseling, and finally, listen to this. The third item on this bullet-pointed list, which Melissa Davey, the author of the article, provided for us, is the Men's Referral Service provides anonymous and confidential telephone counseling information and referrals to men to help them take action to stop using violent and controlling behavior. Phone number follows. Let me read that again slowly. The Men's Referral Service provides anonymous and confidential telephone counseling, information, and referrals to men to help them take action to stop using violent and controlling behavior. That settles it. The author of this article, Melissa L. Davey, is a feminist. Only a feminist with an agenda could have written this article and capped it off with that last item that I just read to you. You would think that the the numbers, the statistics on domestic violence would mean something. I mean, in light of the statistics which tell us that half of all domestic violence is initiated by women at least, and half by men, and then when you break it down into certain categories, women are even the predominant aggressors. And yet, by reading this, you would get no idea of the true state of things. Men's Referral Service provides anonymous and confidential telephone counseling information and referrals to men to help them take action to stop violent and controlling behavior. Rather ironic when you consider that in the realm of domestic violence, about half of all violent and controlling behavior is committed by women. Why is there not a women's referral service to help women control their issues with violent and controlling behavior? All right? Melissa L. Davey, who wrote this article, is a feminist. I think she's a feminist because only a feminist could have put together something like this. And one more little thing I'd like to point out. It puts that at the end of a long article prioritizing the safety of dogs and cats, and it ends up with a slap in the face to men telling them to control their violent and controlling behavior and saying nothing about women's violent and controlling behavior. This article clearly has an agenda. See what the problem with feminism is here? We have so many feminists in the media. They're all over the place. And what I've shared with you here is just one small example, but it happens everywhere. And I'll bet you that Melissa L. Davey is going to get away with this scot-free. Are the editors of her publication going to fire her, tell her to find a job somewhere else? I don't think so. I think her job is safe and secure. Nobody's going to do anything about it. One more little point, a little thing here that's easy to overlook, but I got to scroll back up through the article and see if I can point this out to you. But first I got to find it. Pets have incredible healing powers. I can only applaud Victoria for this program. Royal New Zealand Society for the Prevention of Animals. You know what? I can't find that little point that I wanted to point out to you. But somewhere in this article, it sounded like the author, Melissa Davey, was anticipating what people would say about the article and trying to imply that if you found anything about this objectionable, that you were just another one of those abusive perpetrators. And I can't find the little paragraph here where she talks about that. Oh, so help me, I can't find it. Sorry for all of the dead air, folks. Okay, that's it. I'm not looking anymore. This has been the Vanguard Report, episode number 55. It's been me for this episode. Nick couldn't make it in today. So, I've gone through everything I wanted to talk about. I think it's time to wrap it up. On that note, folks, remember, feminism is what we say it is. Feminism is what we say it is. We are not feminists. We see feminism from outside of feminism, unlike the feminists who see feminism from inside of feminism. But we see it from the outside, and the view from the outside is very, very different from the view from the inside. And we say that feminism is what we say it is, whether they like it or not. See you next week, folks, for episode number 56 of the Vanguard Report. Until then, take care. Ciao.